Have you ever seen a photograph that tells a lie? In 2023, one image broke the internet. A woman standing outside a five-star hotel in Manhattan. Her boyfriend of 6 years screaming at her in the background. And she is just standing there, smiling. The world called her brave. They called her an icon. They said she was the woman who smiled through the breakup. But here is what nobody knew. That smile was not confidence. It was shock. Her brain had completely shut down. And behind that photograph was a secret so dark it would take 3 years to unravel. She had just discovered her boyfriend was sleeping with another woman. She had just learned he had stolen every dollar she had ever saved. And within 48 hours, she would lose her job, her apartment, and nearly her will to live. But 3 weeks after that photograph went viral, flight logs revealed something impossible. She was spotted boarding a jet owned by a man worth $12 billion. Was it luck? Was it revenge? Or was it something nobody saw coming? This is the true story of the smile that cost a billionaire everything, and the ordinary woman who burned his empire to the ground. Stay with me, because what happens next will change how you see every relationship you have ever been in. Have you ever seen a smile that broke the internet? In 2023, one photograph changed everything. A woman standing outside a five-star hotel in Manhattan. Her boyfriend of 6 years screaming at her in the background. And she is just standing there smiling, not crying, not yelling back, smiling like she knows something he does not. 3 weeks later, she was spotted boarding a private jet owned by a man worth $12 billion. But here is what nobody knew. That smile was not confidence. It was survival. And the real story is so much darker than the headlines ever revealed. Her name was Rachel Turner, and before that photograph made her famous, she was nobody special. At least that is what she believed. Rachel grew up in Columbus, Ohio, in a neighborhood where everybody knew everybody, and casseroles showed up at your door whenever anything happened, good or bad. Her father worked at the auto plant for 32 years until his back gave out. Her mother served lunch at the elementary school cafeteria and still remembered every student by name, even the ones who graduated 20 years ago. Rachel was the first person in her family to graduate college. She got her accounting degree from Ohio State, worked her way through school waiting tables, and moved to New York City at 26 with 2 suitcases and a dream that felt too big to say out loud. By 34, she was a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm in Manhattan. Not glamorous, not exciting, but stable. She was the kind of woman who remembered everybody's birthday, who stayed late to help colleagues with their spreadsheets, who laughed too loud at jokes that were not that funny because she wanted people to feel good. She owned exactly one fancy dress. She had bought it on sale 4 years ago and wore it to every event that required something nicer than business casual. Rachel Turner was ordinary, and for most of her life, she thought that was her biggest problem. She was wrong. Her biggest problem had a name: Derek Ashford. Derek was everything Rachel was not. He came from old money in Boston, Dartmouth educated, vice president at a prestigious investment bank by 32. He had the kind of jaw that belonged on magazine covers and the kind of confidence that made everyone in a room turn to look when he walked in. When they met 6 years ago at a charity function Rachel's firm was sponsoring, Derek had pursued her, not the other way around. He sent flowers to her office. He called when he said he would call. He flew to Columbus to meet her parents and charmed her mother so completely that Diane Turner still talked about what a gentleman he was. He cried at Rachel's grandmother's funeral, held her hand through the whole service, told her he could not imagine his life without her. For the first 2 years, Rachel thought she had won the lottery. Paris for her own birthday, weekends in the Hamptons, talk of marriage and children, and a future that sparkled. But love that starts like a fairy tale does not always end like one. The changes came slowly. So slowly that Rachel did not notice them at first. Year 3, Derek started commenting on her clothes. "You are wearing that? Maybe something more sophisticated next time." Year 4, he started commenting on her friends. "Your college friends are kind of basic, Rachel. They do not really fit our lifestyle anymore." Year 5, he started managing her calendar. "You do not need to go to your father's birthday. We have the Henderson dinner that weekend. This is important for my career." By year 6, Rachel had stopped seeing her best friend Wendy. She had missed 2 Christmases in Columbus. She apologized constantly for things that were not her fault. and she had put almost all of her savings into their joint account. The joint account that was only in Derek's name. Here is something that took Rachel 6 years to understand. Abuse does not always leave bruises. Sometimes it leaves you apologizing for existing. Sometimes it leaves you so small that you forget you ever took up space. Derek never hit her. He never had to. He had something more effective than fists. He had words. And Rachel, who had spent her whole life trying to make people feel good, absorbed every single one of those words like poison she was too polite to spit out. Her college friend Wendy saw it clearly. During one of their increasingly rare phone calls, Wendy said something Rachel could not forget. Girl, if Derek was a restaurant, he would be that place with a dress code that makes you feel fat and portions so small you stop at McDonald's on the way home. Rachel had laughed, but she had not argued. Because deep down, in a place she was afraid to look, Rachel knew the truth. She was not in a relationship. She was in a cage. And the bars were made of her own fear of being alone. The night everything changed started like any other night in Derek's world. A charity gala at the Plaza Hotel. The kind of event where the flower budget could feed a small country and everyone competed to look the most casually wealthy. Rachel wore her one fancy dress, the black one she had bought on sale. Derek had made her return the new one she wanted to buy. We need to save for the future, Rachel, he had said, and she had agreed, because she always agreed. Derek had been tense for weeks. Something at work was wrong. Rachel did not know what. He did not share those things with her anymore. But she could feel the pressure building in him like steam in a pipe. That night, he was drinking scotch before they even arrived. By the time they walked into the ballroom, his jaw was tight and his eyes were scanning the room like a predator looking for prey. Or a punching bag. Rachel tried to stay close to him, tried to smooth over his rough edges the way she had learned to do. But nothing she did was right. You are hovering, Derek snapped, adjusting his tie with aggressive fingers. Go mingle. Stop clinging to me like some desperate intern. Rachel's hand dropped from his arm. She felt the familiar sting of shame, the automatic response to make herself smaller. But something else was stirring too, something that had been buried for 6 years under layers of accommodation and self-doubt. It felt like anger, and for the first time, Rachel did not push it down. I was trying to tell you that James Sterling is walking over, she said quietly, the chairman of the board. Derek's eyes widened. His face transformed instantly into a mask of charm as he pivoted to greet the older man, turning his back on Rachel completely. She watched him work the room, watched him laugh at jokes that were not funny, watched him pretend to be someone he was not. And she realized with a clarity that felt like ice water that she had been doing the same thing for 6 years, pretending to be someone she was not, someone smaller, someone quieter, someone who did not mind being treated like furniture. Rachel Turner was 34 years old. She had given Derek Ashford 6 years of her life, and she had absolutely nothing to show for it except a joint account she could not access and a dress she had bought on sale. Something had to change. She just did not know it was going to change in the next 60 minutes. The breaking point came at 11:47 that night. Rachel would remember the exact time because she had just checked her phone, wondering how much longer she had to smile at strangers before she could go home and take off her uncomfortable shoes. Derek had disappeared 20 minutes earlier. Probably networking, she told herself. Probably closing some deal that would make him feel important. But something made her look for him. A whisper of intuition, a flutter of unease. She checked the main ballroom. He was not there. She checked the bar, empty except for an elderly couple arguing about golf. She checked the terrace where smokers huddled against the February cold. No Derek. Rachel was about to give up when she passed a service corridor, a narrow hallway meant for staff, and she heard his voice, not talking, laughing. The low, intimate laugh she had not heard directed at her in years. Rachel pushed open the door, and her entire world collapsed. Derek was pressed against the wall with a woman in a red dress. His hands were tangled in her blonde hair. Her lips were on his neck. They were so absorbed in each other that they did not notice Rachel standing in the doorway. For 3 heartbeats, Rachel could not move, could not breathe, could not process what she was seeing. Then the woman looked up. She did not gasp, did not scramble away, did not look guilty. She smiled. Is that the maid? The woman said, her voice dripping with amusement. Oh, wait, That is the girlfriend. She straightened Derek's collar with practiced fingers. Sweetie, he was never going to marry you. You were just the before picture. Rachel recognized her then. Victoria Kane. She worked at Derek's firm, 29 years old, sharp cheekbones, sharper ambition. Rachel had met her at company events and never thought twice about her. Now she understood why Victoria always seemed to be smirking at her. Derek finally turned around. His face went through several emotions in rapid succession: surprise, irritation, and then something that looked almost like relief. Rachel, his voice was cold, flat, like she was a problem he had been expecting to deal with eventually. You were not supposed to see this. That was it. Not I am sorry. Not this is not what it looks like. Not any of the things a person says when they are caught doing something wrong and they feel remorse. Just you were not supposed to see this. Like the only problem was that she had inconvenienced him by witnessing his betrayal. How long? Rachel heard herself ask. Her voice sounded strange, distant, like it belonged to someone else. Derek sighed. Does it matter? How long, Derek? Victoria answered for him. 2 years, sweetie. Give it your take. She traced a finger down Derek's chest. Did you really think a man like him would settle for someone like you? Look at yourself. Look at me. We both know who belongs in his world. 2 years. Rachel did the math automatically, her accountant brain calculating dates without her permission. 2 years ago, she had skipped her father's 60th birthday for one of Derek's work dinners. 2 years ago, she had stopped talking to Wendy because Derek said their friendship was holding her back. 2 years ago, she had put her entire savings into their joint account because Derek said they needed to start building a future together, while he was building a future with someone else. This is your fault, Derek said, stepping toward Rachel with something ugly in his eyes. You have been so boring lately, so predictable. Victoria understands my world. You still think a fancy dinner is the Olive Garden. Rachel stared at him, at this man she had loved for 6 years, this man she had rearranged her entire life around, this man she had trusted with her heart and her future and her money. And she saw him clearly for the first time. He was not a prince, he was not even a villain. He was just a small man who needed to feel big by making others feel small. I want my money back, Rachel said. The words came out steady, calm, even though everything inside her was screaming. Derek laughed. What money? You did not contribute that much. Consider it payment for 6 years of finishing school. He turned back to Victoria, dismissing Rachel like she was a servant who had interrupted dinner. We should get back to the party. Rachel did not remember leaving the corridor, did not remember walking through the ballroom, did not remember getting to the coat check. She was in shock. Later she would recognize the signs. The numbness, the disconnection, the sense that everything was happening to someone else and she was just watching from very far away. But something was also building in her chest, something hot and dangerous, something that had been buried for 6 years and was finally clawing its way to the surface. She walked out the front entrance of the plaza. The cold hit her like a slap. February in New York, 20 degrees. She was wearing that stupid black dress and no coat because Derek always ran hot and did not like waiting for coat check. A crowd of paparazzi was gathered on the sidewalk, cameras ready. They were there for someone famous. A celebrity guest Rachel had glimpsed earlier. She heard shouting behind her. Rachel, Derek's voice, angry now. Do not make a scene. Get back inside. She turned. Derek was storming toward her, his face red with rage. He grabbed her arm hard enough to leave bruises. You do not get to walk away from me, he hissed. You do not get to embarrass me in front of these people. The cameras started flashing. Rachel looked at Derek, at his twisted face, at his hand on her arm, at the paparazzi capturing every second. And something shifted inside her. She was not going to cry. She was not going to beg. She was not going to give him the satisfaction of seeing her fall apart. She looked directly at the biggest camera, a photographer who had been working the celebrity circuit for 30 years. His name was Rick. She would learn that later. Rachel reached up and adjusted the cheap pearl earring her grandmother had given her, the only real jewelry she owned. And she smiled. It was not a happy smile, not a sad smile. It was the smile of someone who had just realized the cage door had been open the whole time. The smile of someone who was done being small. "Get the shot," she said softly. Rick got the shot. Rachel hailed a yellow cab, climbed in, and drove away without looking back. She did not know it yet, but that photograph would change her life forever. It would make her famous. It would make her a symbol of something she did not yet understand. But that night, Rachel Turner was not thinking about fame or symbols or any of that. That night, she rode home in silence, walked into her tiny apartment, locked the door behind her, slid down to the floor, and cried so hard she thought she might never stop. The smile had been armor. The tears were real. And somewhere in between, Rachel Turner began to understand that surviving was not the same as living, but it was a start. The next morning, Rachel woke up on her bathroom floor. She had cried until she vomited, then cried some more. Mascara was crusted around her eyes. Her grandmother's earring had left an imprint on her cheek where she had slept on it. Her phone was on the counter. 847 notifications. Rachel ignored them all. She called her mother. Diane Turner answered on the first ring. She always did when Rachel's number showed up. "Hey, baby girl, what is going on? It is early for you to call on a Sunday." Rachel opened her mouth to say something normal, something that would not worry her mother. What came out was a sob so deep it felt like it came from her bones. For the next hour, they cried together. 300 miles apart, connected by a phone line and 34 years of unconditional love, Rachel told her mother everything. The cheating, the money, the way Derek had been treating her for years, all the things she had hidden because she was ashamed, because she thought it was her fault, because she believed she was not good enough to deserve better. Diane Turner listened to all of it, and then she said something Rachel would carry with her forever. "Baby, that man did not break you. He just showed you where you were already cracked. And cracks are not weaknesses. They are where the light gets in. Now you know what needs healing. That is a gift, a terrible, painful gift. But a gift. I do not know what to do, Mom. I do not know how to start over." "Yes, you do." Diane's voice was firm. "You start the same way you started before. One step at a time, one day at a time. You come from people who survived worse than this. We survived factories closing and farms dying, and your grandmother survived cancer twice before it finally got her. Turner women do not break. We bend, and then we stand up straighter than before." Rachel hung up feeling slightly more human. She showered, she ate some toast, she finally looked at her phone. The photograph was everywhere. Page 6, TMZ, the Daily Mail, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, the Ice Queen of Fifth Avenue. The headline screamed, "The woman who smiled. Team Rachel versus Team Derek." Rachel scrolled through the comments in a daze. Most of them were supportive. Thousands of women sharing their own stories of walking away from bad relationships. Thousands of people praising her composure, her dignity, her smile. They thought she was brave. They thought she was strong. They thought she was some kind of hero. They had no idea she was sitting in her apartment with $2,600 in her personal checking account, facing the reality that her entire life had just collapsed. Because when Rachel logged into the joint account that morning, the account where she had deposited 6 years of savings, the balance was zero. Derek had moved everything overnight. $218,000. Gone. Rachel called him. It went to voicemail. She texted, no response. She called his office. His assistant said he was unavailable. Finally, she called the bank. They told her what she already knew. The account was in his name only. She had no legal claim to the money. 6 years of work, 6 years of savings, gone in one night. Rachel sat on her couch and stared at the wall for a long time. She thought about all the decisions that had led her here. Moving to New York for Derek, putting her career second to his, giving up her friendships, giving up her family time, giving up herself piece by piece until there was almost nothing left. And now she had nothing to show for it. No money, no relationship, no plan, just a viral photograph and a broken heart. The following Monday, things got worse. Rachel went to work expecting sympathy, maybe a few awkward conversations. Instead, she was called into her boss's office. "Rachel, I am so sorry." Her boss looked genuinely pained. "We have had complaints from clients about the negative attention, the viral photo, the tabloid coverage. It is affecting our business relationships." "What are you saying?" Rachel asked, though she already knew. "I am saying we have to let you go. I am so sorry. You will receive a severance package. But we need you to clear out your desk today." Rachel stood up on legs that felt like water. "May I ask which clients complained?" Her boss hesitated. Then she sighed. "Derek Ashford's firm. They threatened to take their business elsewhere if we kept you employed." Rachel walked to her desk, packed 6 years of her life into a cardboard box, and rode the elevator down for the last time. Derek had not just broken her heart. He was systematically destroying her life. That night, Rachel's landlord called. She was behind on rent. The payment had bounced because the joint account was closed. She had 30 days to pay, or she would be evicted. Rachel sat down with a calculator and did the math. $2,600 in savings. Rent was $3,200. She had maybe 1 month's worth of groceries if she ate nothing but ramen. No job, no prospects, no network, because Derek had slowly isolated her from everyone who might have helped. She was going to lose everything. For the first time since the breakup, Rachel felt real despair. Not the sharp pain of betrayal, not the numbness of shock. Something deeper. Something that whispered she would never recover from this. She was 34 years old. She had followed all the rules, worked hard, been kind, been patient. And now she was sitting alone in a tiny apartment facing homelessness because she had trusted the wrong person. What was the point of any of it? Her phone rang. Unknown number. Rachel almost did not answer, but something made her pick up. "Rachel Turner?" The voice was warm, familiar somehow. "This is Wendy Martinez, your friend from college. The one you stopped calling because your garbage boyfriend said I was too basic." Rachel burst into tears for the second time in 3 days. "Yeah," Wendy said. "That is about what I expected. Listen, I have been watching the news. I know what that monster did to you. And I am not calling to say I told you so, even though I absolutely did tell you so. I am calling because I am driving to New York right now with a suitcase and a bottle of cheap wine, and I am not leaving until we fix this. Wendy, you do not have to do this. I know I do not have to. I want to. That is what friends do. And we are still friends, Rachel. We never stopped being friends. You just got lost for a while. But I kept the light on. Now open your door. I am outside." Rachel opened her door. Wendy stood there with a rolling suitcase, a bottle of wine, and a smile that looked exactly like sunshine. She pulled Rachel into a hug so tight it felt like being put back together. "Here is what we are going to do," Wendy said. "First, we are going to drink this entire bottle. Then we are going to crumb. Then we are going to eat an entire pizza. And then tomorrow, we are going to figure out how to burn Derek Ashford's life to the ground. Not literally, probably. We will see how the wine goes." For the first time in weeks, Rachel laughed. It hurt, like stretching a muscle that had not been used in years. But it was real, and it was a start. Wendy's plan was simple. Step 1, stop drowning. Step 2, start swimming. Step 3, make Derek regret the day he was born. Rachel decided to focus on the first 2 steps for now. Wendy worked at a boutique event planning company in Manhattan. They needed a logistics coordinator, someone organized, someone detail-oriented, someone who could handle chaos without falling apart. "It does not pay as much as accounting," Wendy admitted, "but it is something. And honestly, after what you just survived, I think you can handle anything." Rachel interviewed on a Tuesday. She was hired on a Wednesday. She started on a Thursday. For the next 3 months, Rachel threw herself into work. She was good at it. Her accountant brain loved the logistics, budgets and timelines and vendor contracts, making order out of chaos. She lived in Wendy's spare room, ate cheap meals, and saved every penny. She did not date. She barely socialized. She was surviving. One day at a time, just like her mother said. The viral photograph faded from the headlines. Derek moved on to a new girlfriend, some TikTok star half his age. The internet found new scandals to obsess over. Rachel was becoming invisible again. And for the first time in her life, she did not mind. Invisible felt safe. Invisible felt like healing. 4 months after the breakup, Rachel's boss called her into the office. "Rachel, I have to be honest with you." Her boss, a sharp woman named Patricia, leaned back in her chair. "When Wendy recommended you, I was skeptical. You were a tabloid headline, a liability. But you have proven me wrong. Your work on the Henderson wedding was exceptional. The charity auction for the Arts Foundation was flawless. You have real talent. Thank you. Rachel felt warmth spread through her chest. That means a lot. It should mean more than that. Patricia smiled. I am giving you lead coordinator on our biggest event of the year, the Cole Foundation Winter Gala. 300 guests, $5 million budget. Can you handle it? Yes, Rachel did not hesitate. I can handle it. For the next 2 months, Rachel worked harder than she had ever worked in her life. The Cole Foundation was serious money, the kind of people who did not tolerate mistakes. Everything had to be perfect, and Rachel made it perfect. The night of the gala, Rachel stood in the kitchen of the Pierre Hotel, yes, the same hotel where her life had fallen apart, and coordinated a symphony of caterers, florists, musicians, and waitstaff. 18 minutes before the doors opened, the ice sculpture cracked. 45 minutes in, a caterer dropped an entire tray of champagne flutes. 2 hours in, the keynote speaker's microphone died mid-sentence. Rachel handled all of it, calmly, efficiently, without a single guest noticing anything was wrong. She was in the zone, the place where problems became puzzles and chaos became order. She had forgotten how good it felt to be competent, to be valued for her mind instead of her ability to stay quiet. By midnight, the gala was winding down. Guests were leaving happy. Donations had exceeded projections by 30%. Patricia was practically glowing. Rachel finally had allowed herself to breathe. She stepped onto the service balcony for some fresh air. The city sparkled below her, 1,000 lights against the black February sky. You coordinated this event. Rachel turned. A man was standing in the shadows. Tall, broad shoulders, salt and pepper hair. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him like it had been sewn onto his body. He stepped into the light, and Rachel recognized him from the foundation materials. Marcus Cole, 44 years old, self-made billionaire, founder of the Cole Foundation, net worth approximately $12 billion. He was also, according to every business magazine in existence, one of the most reclusive and difficult men in America. Yes, Rachel said. I did. Marcus studied her. His eyes were dark and intense, but there was something warm behind them, something curious. The ice sculpture crisis, the champagne incident, the microphone malfunction. How did you handle all of that without anyone noticing? Preparation and a really good backup plan. Marcus almost smiled. Almost. What is your name? Rachel Turner. Rachel Turner. He repeated it slowly like he was memorizing it. You are the woman from the photograph. Rachel felt her stomach drop. The photograph. Of course. She would never escape it. Yes, she said quietly. That was me. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he said something Rachel did not expect. That was the moment I first heard your name. But it is not why I came out here to find you. I came because I watched you work tonight. You solved problems I did not even know existed. You kept 300 difficult people happy for 5 hours. That is harder than most things I do. Rachel blinked. Thank you. I would like to hire you. I already have a job. Marcus nodded. I know. I would like to offer you a better one. My foundation needs someone permanent. Someone who understands logistics and people and how to make impossible things happen. The job is real. The salary is significant. And you would be working directly for me. Rachel thought about it, about Derek's campaign to destroy her career, about how easily he could pressure her current employer if he wanted to hurt her again, about how Marcus Cole's name carried enough weight to shield her from anything. But more than that, she thought about how it felt to be seen, not as a scandal, not as a victim, as someone with value. I would need a contract, Rachel said, one that makes it clear this is merit-based. If I fail, you fire me. No special treatment. Marcus extended his hand. Done. They shook. His grip was firm. His eyes never left hers. I will have my lawyers draw up the paperwork, Marcus said. Welcome to Cole Industries, Ms. Turner. I have a feeling you are going to exceed every expectation. He walked back into the party, leaving Rachel alone with the skyline and the wild beating of her heart. She did not know it yet, but she had just taken the first step toward everything she had ever wanted, and everything Derek Ashford was about to lose. For 6 months, Rachel Turner worked harder than she had ever worked before. The Cole Foundation was not like her old accounting firm. It was ambitious, demanding, exhausting in the best possible way. Rachel reorganized their entire event structure, launched 3 new charitable programs, doubled their donor retention rate. Marcus Cole watched her work. He did not hover or micromanage. He simply paid attention. And when Rachel made suggestions, he listened. They developed a rhythm, weekly strategy meetings that turned into long conversations about philanthropy and business and life, working dinners that stretched past midnight, a partnership built on mutual respect. Somewhere along the way, respect became something else. Rachel was not looking for love. She was not even looking for friendship. But Marcus was different from any man she had ever known. He did not perform, did not charm, did not try to impress her with money or power. He was simply himself, honest, direct, surprisingly funny when he let his guard down. He remembered every detail of their conversations, asked about her parents, sent flowers to her mother on her birthday without making a big deal about it, tipped every waiter 40%, and he never once made Rachel feel small. One evening, after a particularly long strategy session, Marcus said he wanted to show her something. They drove for 2 hours outside the city until they reached a quiet neighborhood in New Jersey. Marcus parked in front of a modest brick building, a group home for teenage boys. He had grown up here after aging out of foster care at 18. "I need you to understand something," Marcus said quietly. "Everything I have built started here, in this building, with nothing. I was 17 years old when I realized no one was coming to save me, that I had to save myself. It took me 25 years to get from this doorstep to where I am now, but I never forgot where I came from." He turned to look at her. "If we are going to be something more than colleagues, you need to know who I really am. Not the billionaire, not the magazine covers. The kid who slept in a room with 6 other boys and dreamed about having a family." Rachel took his hand. "Thank you for showing me." They sat in silence for a long time, watching the lights in the windows, thinking about the paths that had led them here. That night, everything changed between them. Over the following months, they built something real, something that grew slowly, carefully, like a plant that had been given exactly the right amount of light. Rachel finally felt safe, finally felt like herself, finally believed that she might be happy. Which is exactly when Derek Ashford decided to destroy her again. It started with a phone call. Rachel's boss, Patricia, called her on a Tuesday morning. Her voice was strange, flat. "Rachel, I need to tell you something. We have lost 3 major clients this week. All of them received calls from Derek Ashford's firm. He is telling people that anyone who works with you is blacklisted from his network." Rachel felt the familiar chill of fear. "He cannot do that," she said. "He is doing it." Patricia sounded tired. "I am not firing you. I am not that kind of person. But I wanted you to know. Whatever you did to this man, he is not finished with you." Rachel hung up and stared at her phone. It had been almost a year since the breakup, a year since the photograph. Derek had moved on to another girlfriend. His career was still intact. He had won, by every objective measure. But he was not done. Because men like Derek do not want to win. They want you to lose. Forever. 3 weeks later, Rachel's apartment was broken into. Nothing valuable was taken. But her laptop was destroyed. Her files were scattered. And written on her bathroom mirror in red lipstick were 3 words. "You are nothing." The police said there was no evidence, no fingerprints, no witnesses. But the doorman remembered a blonde woman leaving the building that afternoon. Victoria Kane. Rachel called Marcus. He was at her apartment within an hour. "This is not just about the breakup anymore," Marcus said grimly. "This is harassment. This is stalking. We need to involve lawyers. He will just find another way." Rachel's voice was hollow. "He will always find another way. I am never going to escape this." "Yes, you are." Marcus took her face in his hands. "Look at me. You are not alone anymore. Whatever he does next, we face it together. Do you understand? Together." Rachel looked into his eyes. She saw something there she had not seen in a long time. She saw someone who would not leave. "Okay," she whispered. "Together." But she did not know that Derek was just getting started, and his next attack would come from a direction she never expected. For 3 more months, things were quiet. Too quiet, Wendy said during one of their weekly dinners. This is the part of the horror movie where everyone relaxes and then the killer pops out of the closet. Thanks for that image, Rachel said dryly. But Wendy was right to be suspicious. Derek had been planning, and he had help. Victoria Kane had been watching Rachel's rise with growing fury. She had invested 2 years in Derek Ashford, helped him scheme, covered his tracks, sacrificed her own reputation on the promise that he would leave Rachel and be with her. Instead, Derek had become obsessed with destroying Rachel, not loving Victoria, destroying Rachel. She was still just a tool in his hands. When Derek came to Victoria with his new plan, she agreed immediately, not for him anymore, for herself. If she could not have what she wanted, she would make sure Rachel lost everything. The plan was elegant in its cruelty. Step one was creating fake evidence. Doctored photographs showing Rachel meeting with executives from coal industry's biggest competitor. Forged emails suggesting she was selling confidential donor information. Fabricated financial records pointing to embezzlement. Step two was feeding the evidence to a business journalist known for sensational stories. Step three was watching Rachel burn. The story broke on a Thursday morning. Coal Foundation coordinator accused of fraud. Rachel's phone rang 18 times before she could answer. Her inbox exploded. Twitter turned into a battlefield. The board of directors convened an emergency meeting. Marcus was forced to put Rachel on administrative leave pending investigation. She sat in her apartment, watching her life collapse for the second time. Marcus came to see her that evening. He looked exhausted, torn. "I do not believe this," Rachel said, her voice breaking. "I did not do any of this. You know me. You know I would never do this." Marcus was silent for a moment too long, and in that silence, Rachel's heart shattered. "You hesitated," she whispered. "You actually hesitated." "Rachel." Marcus reached for her hand. "Please understand. My board is demanding answers. My reputation is on the line. Everything I have built is at risk. I want to believe you, but I am being told to consider the evidence, and I am just trying to process everything." That pause. Rachel pulled her hand away. "That pause just told me everything I need to know." She stood up. "I think you should leave." "Rachel, please, leave." Now, Marcus left. Rachel stood alone in her apartment. The walls felt like they were closing in. The silence was deafening. She thought about everything she had rebuilt. The job she loved, the man she trusted, the future she had finally allowed herself to imagine. Gone. All of it. Again. Because Derek Ashford would never stop. Because Victoria Kane was willing to commit crimes to see her suffer. Because no matter how hard Rachel fought, the world kept knocking her down. She grabbed her coat and walked out into the night. She did not know where she was going. She just needed to move, to breathe, to feel something other than this crushing weight on her chest. She ended up on the Brooklyn Bridge, not to jump, but to scream. And she did. She screamed into the void of the New York night until her throat was raw and her lungs burned and there was nothing left in Odker but a strange, empty calm. She stood there for a long time, watching the lights on the water. And then she made a decision. She was done being the victim, done being the punching bag, done letting Derek and Victoria and everyone else control her story. They wanted a war? She was going to give them a war, and she was going to win. Rachel did not go home that night. She went to Wendy's apartment. It was 2 a.m. Wendy opened the door in pajamas covered with cartoon pizza slices. "Okay," Wendy said. "That face tells me something terrible has happened. Come in. I am making coffee." Over the next 4 hours, Rachel told Wendy everything. The fake evidence, the board investigation, Marcus's hesitation, the bridge. Wendy listened without interrupting. When Rachel finished, Wendy was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that changed everything. "You are an accountant, Rachel. A forensic accountant, technically. You spent years finding fraud in financial records. And you are telling me some amateur criminals forged evidence against you? And you are just going to sit here and cry about it?" Rachel stared at her. Wendy leaned forward. "Find the fraud, Rachel. Prove they faked it. You have the skills. You just forgot you have them because you have been too busy surviving to remember how to fight." Something clicked in Rachel's brain. A gear that had been stuck for months suddenly started turning. Wendy was right. Rachel knew how to find fraud. It was literally her job for 8 years. She had uncovered embezzlement schemes worth millions. She had testified in federal court cases. She had brought down executives who thought they were untouchable. And she had been sitting here feeling helpless, while amateurs tried to destroy her with fabricated evidence. No more. I need a forensic accountant I can trust, Rachel said. Someone who is not connected to any of this. Wendy smiled. I know a guy. He was the best man at my cousin's wedding, complete nerd. Works for a white-collar crime firm. Owes me a favor because I did not tell his wife about that stripper at the bachelor party. Call him. Rachel's voice was steel now. Tonight. The investigation took 3 weeks. Rachel and Wendy's guy, a forensic specialist named Howard, worked around the clock. They analyzed every piece of evidence that had been used against her. And they found exactly what Rachel expected. The photographs were doctored. The metadata showed they had been created months after the dates they claimed to show. The email headers were forged using a technique that left traces a competent investigator could find. The financial records had inconsistencies that only someone with Rachel's training would notice. But the real breakthrough came when they traced the origin of the fake evidence. The doctored files had been created on a computer registered to an IP address in Manhattan, an address that matched Derek Ashford's apartment building. He had not even been careful. He had been so confident that Rachel would crumble, he had not bothered to cover his tracks. But Rachel found something else in her investigation, something she had not expected. When she followed the money trail, looking for evidence of the supposed embezzlement, she discovered that real embezzlement was happening at Derek's firm. Derek had been stealing from his clients for years, hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe millions. He had been cooking the books to cover gambling losses and bad investments. Victoria had been helping him hide it. The money Derek took from Rachel was not the only money he had stolen. It was just the beginning. Rachel had been looking for evidence to clear her name. She had found evidence to destroy her enemy. She went to Marcus. He was in his office, looking like he had not slept in weeks. When he saw Rachel, his face cycled through relief, guilt, and fear. Rachel, I have been trying to reach you. I am so sorry for how I reacted. I should have trusted you. I should have believed you. I was scared and I handled it wrong, and I understand if you never forgive me, but please let me explain. Rachel held up her hand. I am not here for an apology. I am here because you deserve to know the truth. She laid out everything, the doctored evidence, the IP traces, Derek's embezzlement scheme, Victoria's involvement, all of it documented and verified. Marcus reviewed the files in silence. When he finished, he looked at Rachel with something like awe. You did all of this yourself? With help from a friend? Rachel's voice was calm. I am an accountant, Marcus. A good one. Finding fraud is what I do. I just forgot that for a while. Marcus stood up. He walked around his desk and stopped in front of her. I failed you, he said quietly. When you needed me to believe in you, I hesitated. That was wrong. That was a mistake I will regret for the rest of my life. Yes. Rachel met his eyes. It was. But I understand why it happened. You spent your whole life being betrayed by people you trusted. When the evidence pointed at me, part of you was waiting for me to be just like everyone else. She reached out and took his hand. I am not like everyone else, Marcus, and I am not going to leave you because you had a moment of doubt. What matters is what happens next. Marcus squeezed her hand. What happens next, he asked. Rachel smiled. The real smile, the one that came from power, not armor. We set a trap, and we end this forever. The plan came together over the next month. Marcus assembled his best lawyers. Rachel brought in Howard and his forensic team. Wendy handled logistics because she refused to be left out. They decided on a public venue. The Cole Foundation Spring Gala. 500 guests, every major player in New York finance and philanthropy. Derek would not be able to resist. He had been emboldened by his apparent success in destroying Rachel. The fraud story had damaged her reputation. She was on leave from her job. As far as Derek knew, he had won, which meant he was exactly where they wanted him. The bait was simple. They leaked information that the fraud investigation had cleared Rachel completely. They leaked that she was returning to her position. They leaked that the Cole Foundation was about to announce a massive new partnership worth $500 million. And they leaked that Derek Ashford was being considered for a seat on the foundation board. It was a lie, of course, But Derek's ego was too large to question why his enemy's organization would suddenly want him. He accepted the invitation within 24 hours. The night of the gala arrived. The Museum of Natural History had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere, music from a 40-piece orchestra. Rachel stood in the center of it all, wearing a red dress. Wendy's grandmother had altered it. The same grandmother who had worked alterations at Macy's for 30 years and had dressed brides, socialites, and, as she put it, women going to see their ex with revenge on their mind. "Honey," Grandma Ellen had said while pinning the hem, "make sure you walk slow. Let them see you coming." Rachel intended to do exactly that. Derek arrived at 8:15, looking smug and self-satisfied. Victoria was on his arm, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Rachel's apartment. They did not see Rachel at first. They were too busy scanning the room for important people to impress. But Rachel saw them. She felt a flicker of the old fear. The instinct to shrink, to hide, to make herself small. She let it pass through her, and then she let it go. She was not that woman anymore. The evening progressed according to plan. Derek worked the room, shaking hands, making connections, completely unaware that everyone he spoke to had been briefed on exactly who he was. At 9:30, the lights dimmed. Marcus took the stage. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he said. "Before we begin, I want to address some allegations that have been circulating about our foundation and about Rachel Turner." Derek smirked. Victoria whispered something in his ear. "We investigated those allegations thoroughly," Marcus continued, "and we found something interesting. The evidence was fabricated." The room went silent. "We traced the fabrication to two individuals in this room tonight, Derek Ashford and Victoria Kane." The spotlight shifted to Derek. His face went pale. But Marcus was not finished. "In the course of our investigation, we discovered something far more serious. Derek Ashford has been embezzling from his clients for nearly a decade. He has stolen over $40 million from pension funds, retirement accounts, and charitable trusts, including trusts meant to support children's hospitals." The gasps were audible. Derek tried to run. He shoved through the crowd, knocking over a waiter, spilling champagne everywhere. Victoria followed, screaming that it was a setup. They made it approximately 15 feet before the FBI agents stepped out of the crowd. There were 6 of them. They had been posing as waitstaff and guests all evening, courtesy of Marcus's connection to the Attorney General. "Derek Ashford, Victoria Kane, you are under arrest." The cameras flashed. The guests stared. The orchestra had stopped playing. Rachel watched as Derek was forced to his knees and handcuffed. Watched as Victoria's carefully composed face crumbled into ugly sobs. Watched as the people Derek had spent years impressing turned their backs on him one by one. He looked up and saw her. "Rachel," his voice cracked. "Rachel, please, you do not understand. I can explain everything. We can work this out. I still love you." Rachel walked toward him slowly. The red dress caught the light. Every eye in the room was on her. She stopped directly in front of Derek. She looked at the man who had stolen 6 years of her life, who had taken her money and her confidence and her sense of self, who had tried to destroy her not once but twice, who had told her she was nothing. And she felt absolutely nothing in return. No anger, no satisfaction, no triumph, just peace. "You know what is funny, Derek?" She spoke quietly so only he could hear. "I spent so long thinking you broke me. But you did not break anything. You just revealed what needed to change. And everything that has happened since, my job, my friends, my relationship, my entire life, none of it would exist if you had not walked out that door." She leaned closer. "So thank you. Thank you for being so terrible that I had no choice but to become better. I hope you think about that every day for the next 15 years. She straightened up. "Goodbye, Derek. I hope you find peace. But I doubt you will." She turned and walked away without looking back. Marcus was waiting for her at the edge of the dance floor. He took her hand. "Are you okay?" Rachel looked at him, at this man who had believed in her when she had stopped believing in herself, who had made mistakes and owned them, who loved her not for what she could give him, but for who she was. "I am better than okay," she said, and for the first time in years, she meant it completely. The trial of Derek Ashford began on a gray Monday in October. Rachel had debated whether to attend. Part of her wanted to be there for every moment, to watch the man who had nearly destroyed her face the consequences of his actions. Another part wanted to stay as far away as possible, to let the legal system do its work while she focused on building her future. In the end, she chose a middle path. She attended the opening statements and the verdict. Everything in between, she followed from a distance. The Southern District of New York courthouse was a study in marble and gravity. Rachel sat in the gallery on that first day, wearing a navy blue dress that Wendy had helped her pick out. Professional, composed, nothing that would give Derek the satisfaction of seeing her struggle. Marcus had offered to come. Rachel had declined. "This is something I need to do alone," she had told him. "I need to see it through, but I need to do it on my own terms." He had understood. That was one of the things she loved most about him. He knew when to hold on and when to let go. Derek entered the courtroom in a suit that probably cost $5,000, but it hung on him wrong. He had lost weight. His hair was thinner. The confidence that used to radiate from him like heat from a furnace had dimmed to something flickering and uncertain. He looked, Rachel realized with surprise, ordinary. For years, she had built him up in her mind as something larger than life, a monster, a titan, an unstoppable force that would pursue her forever. But sitting there in that courtroom, waiting to answer for his crimes, Derek Ashford was just a man, a small man who had done terrible things and was finally being held accountable. Rachel felt something shift inside her. The last remnants of fear, the ones she had been carrying without realizing it, began to dissolve. The prosecutor was a sharp-tongued woman named Elena Vance. She laid out the case with surgical precision. $47 million embezzled over 9 years, pension funds drained, retirement accounts gutted, charitable trusts meant for children's hospitals redirected into Derek's personal accounts. And then there was the matter of the fabricated evidence against Rachel Turner, the doctored photographs, the binding, forged emails, the systematic campaign to destroy a woman whose only crime was walking away from him. Victoria Kane testified on day 4. She had taken a plea deal, 3 years in exchange for her cooperation. She looked smaller than Rachel remembered, diminished. Victoria described everything: how Derek had recruited her to help hide the embezzlement, how they had created the fake evidence against Rachel, how Derek had become obsessed with destroying his ex-girlfriend, spending more time plotting her downfall than running his actual business. He said she humiliated him, Victoria testified. He said he would never be able to move on until she had nothing, until she was broken completely. Rachel watched Derek's face as Victoria spoke. She watched him realize that the woman he had used was now the weapon being used against him. There was a kind of poetry in that. The verdict came 3 weeks later, guilty on all 14 counts. Rachel was in the courtroom when the jury foreman read the decision. She watched Derek's shoulders slump, watched his expensive lawyer close his briefcase with the resignation of someone who had expected this outcome, watched the federal marshals move into position. 15 years in federal prison. No possibility of parole for at least 12. Derek turned as they led him away. His eyes found Rachel in the gallery. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. 6 years of history, 2 years of aftermath. A lifetime of pain condensed into a single glance. Rachel did not smile, did not gloat, did not give him anything at all. She simply looked at him with the calm, steady gaze of someone who had moved on completely. Derek's face crumpled. He looked away first. Rachel stood up and walked out of the courthouse into the October sunlight. It was over. It was finally, truly over. The year that followed was the busiest of Rachel's life. She threw herself into work with an intensity that surprised even her. The Cole Foundation had always been successful, but under Rachel's leadership, it became something more, something transformative. She reorganized their entire grant structure, partnered with organizations across the country, doubled their charitable output in 18 months. But her real passion project was something new, something personal. She called it Fresh Start. The program was designed for women leaving abusive relationships, not just physical abuse, but economic abuse, the kind of control that traps people through money and manipulation and systematic isolation. Rachel knew that kind of abuse intimately. She had lived it, and she was determined to help others escape it. Fresh Start provided financial literacy education, emergency funds, job training, legal assistance, everything a woman needed to rebuild her life from the ground up. She spoke at conferences about her own experience, shared her story with audiences who had never heard someone talk so openly about economic abuse, received thousands of letters from women who recognized themselves in her words. The woman who smiled became more than a meme. She became a movement. And through it all, Marcus was beside her, not in front of her, clearing the path, not behind her, pushing her forward, beside her, walking at her pace, supporting without smothering. They had their struggles. All couples do. He worked too many hours. She forgot to take care of herself when she was focused on a project. They argued about small things and occasionally about big things, but they always came back to center, always found their way back to each other. One evening, about a year after Derek's conviction, Marcus took Rachel to a small Italian restaurant in Brooklyn. It was the same restaurant where they had shared their first unofficial date, back when Rachel was still raw from the fraud accusations and Marcus was still trying to prove he was different from every other man who had hurt her. They ordered the same dishes they had ordered that first time, talked about work and family and Wendy's latest romantic catastrophe and Rachel's mother's increasingly unsubtle hints about grandchildren. Then Marcus got quiet. He reached across the table and took Rachel's hand. "I have been thinking," he said, "about what I want the rest of my life to look like." Rachel felt her heart rate increase. "And every version I can imagine," Marcus continued, "has you in it, not the penthouse version, not the gala version, the real version, the version where we have a home, where we build something together, where we grow old arguing about whose turn it is to take out the trash." He pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. Rachel's breath caught, but when he opened it, there was no ring inside. There was a key. "I bought a house," Marcus said, "in Connecticut. Nothing fancy, 3 bedrooms, a yard, room for a garden if you want one, room for a family if we decide we want one." He looked at her with those dark, intense eyes she had come to love so completely. "I am not asking you to marry me. Not yet. I want that to be its own moment. When you are ready. Right now I am asking you something simpler. I am asking you to build a life with me. A real life. A home." Rachel looked at the key. She thought about everything that had brought her to this moment. The girl from Ohio who thought she had to shrink to be loved. The woman who had been systematically destroyed and had rebuilt herself from nothing. The person she was becoming, stronger and more certain every day. She thought about what home meant. Not a place, a feeling, a person. She looked up at Marcus. "Yes," she said. Marcus blinked. "Yes, yes to the house, yes to the life, yes to growing old and arguing about trash." Rachel laughed, tears streaming down her face. "Yes to all of it. Yes." Marcus came around the table and pulled her into his arms. The other diners applauded. The waiter brought champagne on the house. Rachel held on to Marcus and let herself feel something she had not felt in years. She felt safe. She felt loved. She felt home. The wedding was 6 months later, small and intimate. 50 guests in a garden venue upstate. Wendy as maid of honor, crying through her entire speech. Rachel's parents in the front row, her father trying to hide his tears and failing completely. Rachel wore a simple dress she found at a sample sale. Some things she decided did not need to change. Marcus cried when he saw her walking down the aisle. Actually cried in front of everyone, without any attempt to hide it. Later he would tell her that was the moment he knew they were going to be okay. Because a man who could cry at his own wedding was a man who had nothing left to prove. The reception was held at the Museum of Natural History, not for show, but because that was where everything had changed. When the dancing started, Marcus pulled Rachel close. "Do you remember," he murmured, "the first time we danced? At the Cole Foundation Gala. You stepped on my feet twice. I was nervous. You were terrible." Marcus laughed. "I have improved, marginally." They swayed together as the music played. Around them, their friends and family celebrated. Wendy was teaching Rachel's father some kind of line dance. Rachel's mother was deep in conversation with Marcus's business partner about casserole recipes. It was chaotic and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. "I love you," Rachel whispered. Marcus kissed her forehead. "I love you too. More than I know how to say. Then stop talking and dance with me." He smiled. "Yes, ma'am." And they did, long after the other couples had tired, long after the band started packing up, long after the night had turned to morning. They danced because they had earned this, every step, every moment, and they were just getting started. 3 years later, Rachel Turner Cole stood on the steps of the Pierre Hotel. It was February, cold enough that her breath made small clouds in the air. The same kind of cold as that night, the night that had changed everything. But nothing else was the same. Rachel was 40 years old now, executive director of one of the most successful charitable foundations in the country, mother to a 2-year-old daughter named Eleanor, after the grandmother Marcus had never known but always honored, wife, leader, survivor. Today was special. The Cole Foundation was announcing a new initiative, $100 million dedicated to combating economic abuse nationwide, the largest program of its kind ever created. And they were announcing it here, at the Pierre, where Rachel's nightmare had begun and her transformation had started. Some people had questioned the choice of venue. "Are you sure?" Wendy had asked, her forehead creased with concern. "That place has a lot of memories, not good ones." Rachel had smiled. "That is exactly why we are doing it there. I am not going to let one terrible night define that building forever. I am going to rewrite the story." The press was gathered on the sidewalk, dozens of cameras, reporters from every major network. The story of Rachel Turner Cole had become something larger than herself, a symbol of resilience that resonated with millions of people. The town car pulled up to the curb. Rachel took a deep breath. "You ready?" Marcus asked from beside her. Eleanor was in his arms, wearing a tiny blue dress and attempting to eat her own shoe. "Ready?" "Ready," Rachel said. They stepped out of the car. The flash of bulbs were blinding. The shouts of reporters overlapped into a wall of sound. "Rachel, over here. Ms. Cole, can you tell us about the initiative? How does it feel to be back at the Pierre?" Rachel walked up the steps slowly, deliberately, the way Wendy's grandmother had told her to walk. Make them wait, make them watch, make them remember. At the top of the stairs, she paused. She looked at the exact spot where Derek had grabbed her arm 3 years ago. The spot where she had looked into a camera and smiled because her brain was too shocked to do anything else. She stood there for a long moment, letting the memories wash over her, letting them exist without controlling her. Then she turned to face the cameras. A reporter from Good Morning America stepped forward. "Ms. Cole, this must be an emotional return. Can you tell us how it feels to be back here?" Rachel considered the question carefully. "You know," she said, "I spent a long time avoiding this building, driving around it, taking different routes so I would not have to see it. It represented the worst moment of my life, the moment everything fell apart." She paused. "But I realized something. Places do not have power. We give them power. And I was tired of giving this building power over me. So I decided to take it back, to come here on my own terms, to turn a site of trauma into a site of triumph." She gestured to the crowd gathered around her. 3 years ago, I walked out of those doors with nothing. No money, no job, no sense of my own worth. A man I trusted had spent 6 years convincing me I was worthless. And I believed him. I believed him so completely that I forgot who I was. Her voice grew stronger. "But here is what I learned. The worst moment of your life does not have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of asking for help, the beginning of discovering your own strength, the beginning of building something beautiful from something broken." She looked directly into the cameras. "I am not standing here because I am special or unique or different from anyone else. I am standing here because I survived, because I found people who believed in me when I could not believe in myself, because I did the hard, unglamorous, sometimes humiliating work of putting my life back together, one day at a time." She smiled, the real smile, the one that came from joy, not survival. "If I can do it, anyone can." And that is why we are here today. That is why we are committing $100 million to helping others escape the same trap I was in. Because every woman deserves to know that she is worth more than how someone else treats her. Every woman deserves a fresh start. The applause began slowly, then built into something thunderous. Rachel stood in the center of it, letting it wash over her. Marcus caught her eye from the edge of the crowd. He was grinning, bouncing Eleanor in his arms. Their daughter was clapping too, though she had no idea why. Rachel blew them a kiss. Inside the hotel, the gala was everything Rachel had hoped for. 500 guests, major donors, corporate partners, government officials. But the highlight was not the fancy food or the important speeches. The highlight was the women. 20 survivors of economic abuse had been invited as honored guests. Women who had gone through the Fresh Start program. Women who had rebuilt their lives from nothing. Women who understood exactly what Rachel had experienced because they had experienced it too. One of them, a woman named Maria who had escaped a controlling husband with 3 children and $12 to her name, approached Rachel during dinner. "I watched your story on the news," Maria said. "3 years ago, I was still with him then, still believing his lies. But when I saw you smile in that photograph, something changed. I thought, if she can walk away, maybe I can too." She took Rachel's hands. "It took me another year of fear and planning and hiding money in a coffee can. But I did it. I got out. And the Fresh Start program helped me build a new life. My kids are safe. I have a job. I have hope." Her eyes filled with tears. "You saved my life. You do not even know me, but you saved my life." Rachel hugged her tightly. "You saved yourself," Rachel whispered. "I just held the ladder." Later that night, after the gala had ended and Eleanor had been put to bed at the hotel suite, Rachel stood on the balcony looking out at the Manhattan skyline. Marcus found her there, 2 glasses of wine in hand. "Penny for your thoughts," he said. Rachel accepted the wine. "I was thinking about photographs," she said, "about how one moment, captured forever, can change everything. That photograph from 3 years ago, it defined me for so long. The woman who smiled, like that was all I was." She sipped her wine. "But now there are other photographs. Our wedding, Eleanor's birth, tonight, a whole collection of moments that tell a different story, a better story." Marcus stood beside her. "What story is that?" Rachel thought about it. "The story of a woman who was broken and healed, who was lost and found, who was told she was nothing and proved she was everything." She looked at him. "The story of a woman who found love, real love, the kind that makes you stronger instead of smaller." Marcus set down his wine. He pulled her into his arms. "I love you," he said. "More today than yesterday, more tomorrow than today, for the rest of our lives." Rachel leaned into him. "I love you too. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for being worth believing in." They stood there together, watching the city lights sparkle against the dark February sky. Somewhere out there, a woman was making a plan to leave a bad relationship. Somewhere, a survivor was taking her first steps toward a new life. Somewhere, a girl was looking in the mirror and starting to believe she deserved better. Rachel could not save all of them, but she could show them it was possible. That was enough. That was everything. She smiled. The real smile, the one that meant peace and gratitude for every step of the journey that had brought her here. The story was not over. There would be new challenges, new triumphs, new chapters yet to be written. But for now, in this moment, Rachel Turner Cole was exactly where she was meant to be. Home. And that is the story of Rachel Turner. The woman who smiled through the worst night of her life and built an empire from the ashes. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Rachel should have visited Derek in prison? Some people say closure requires confrontation. Others say her silence was the ultimate power move. Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one, and I will pin the most thoughtful response. Also, I have a question that might hit close to home. Have you ever stayed in a situation longer than you should have because you were afraid of starting over? You do not have to share details. Just type the word yes if that resonates with you, because if Rachel's story teaches us anything, it is that starting over is not the end. It is the beginning. If this story moved you, hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that stories like this matter. And if you have not already, subscribe and tap that notification bell. Every week, I bring you real stories of women who refuse to stay broken. Women who turn their pain into power. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. You never know whose life you might change. Thank you for staying until the end. It means more than you know. I will see you in the next one.